What I don't want to say is that there's nothing to be done, that there is no moral or political imperative, and that we can just continue with this mindless potlatch civilization until everything is ruined, because I don't believe that, and I think it's socially irresponsible to say that. On the other hand, what I don't want to fall too much in the other direction toward is saying that it all depends on us and that we must raise enormous levels of anxiety in ourselves and act as though the salvation of the planet depended on us. The most important political work that needs to be done is for each of us to raise our own consciousness about these issues, and then to create a community based on the sum total of our personal acts of reformation. But if I were a rationalist, I would be completely despairing. So we are more in the role of like midwives of this new order. It's useful then to return to that birth metaphor. The birth of the new humanity and the new earth is going to happen. But in the same way that a midwife or an obstetrician can ease a birth, make it smoother, make it less painful for all concerned, that's the role political activism needs to take. Act as though the salvation of the earth is on our shoulders, but feel as though it is an automatic unfolding that we need not have anxiety about. The Chinese philosopher Wi Po Yang said, worry is preposterous. And I think that's true. We don't know enough to worry. And to worry is, in a sense, a kind of act of hubris, because you are claiming complete knowledge of the situation and then you worry. And so what is much more empowering and what makes the process of historical ending easier is to act from your heart, and to individual acts of caring are more important than giving your energy to grandiose political schemes. I mean, it almost comes back down to the gospel admonition to heal the sick, clothe the naked, visit the imprisoned, bury the dead. But there's nothing there about grandiose political reform and all that sort of thing. That, I think, arises out of the zeitgeist of the collectivity. And I'm very hopeful. People have a sort of hear my rap differently. I mean, I've had people, after what I thought were inspiring panegyrics, come up to me and say, but it's such a dark and horrifying vision. It means that I failed as a communicator in that situation, because I'm the gonest and most irrational hope freak I've ever met. I mean, I think everything is fine. Everything is going toward the purpose for which it was intended, but it's an act of conscious awareness on the part of each of us that carries us toward that. So, often in what I say there is, if not the fact of contradiction, then the appearance of contradiction. This is because, to my mind, life is complicated enough to admit of contradiction. Was it Oscar Wilde, or who was it, who said, I contradict myself? I contradict myself. Logical consistency is one of the prejudices that we've inherited from the scientific attempt to describe the world. But in fact, even science at its basic level has now abandoned that as an ideal. In quantum physics, the way it's done mathematically is you have an ordinary causal logic, but in order to handle what quantum physics is attempting to describe, you also have to have what are called islands of Boole, or islands of Boolean logic, which is embedded in the standard logic and which is a logic of both and. And you cannot reduce this to a non-contradictory description. The great thing about the rational program of science is pushed far enough, it reveals the irrational foundations of nature. And that's really what the crisis in science now is. The cutting edges of physical science have contacted the Heisenberg uncertainty principle in the 20s, the anthropocentric principle in the 80s and 70s. The notion of an observer outside the system with a godlike objectivity and zero input into the situation, that was a necessary fiction for the more naive program of description of nature. But as we move into the more sophisticated description of nature, we have to place the observer in the picture, and then there is going to be a reverberation of contradiction that is probably can't be gotten rid of. I mentioned a little, or I referred to this in the talk last night, where I said we shouldn't push for closure. We should accept that it is in principle mysterious, and so we are never explaining life or relationships or economies or whatever we're looking at. We're describing them with ever more prescient accuracy, but we cannot eliminate the unknown. One of my teachers years ago, West Churchman, wrote a wonderful book called Planning on Uncertainty. And I think, we all need to plan on uncertainty, and it's the one thing that is left out of most models, because the model builder has such faith in the model that he would never build in a trapdoor into the realm of uncertainty. And yet life is composed almost entirely of these kinds of trapdoors, you see.